I was when I started working at the Museum of Contemporary Art in LA, I was actually pretty naive about art. I didn't know a lot about, anything probably post-abstract expressionism. And that's basically what was at this museum. It was like abstract expressionism on. And I was really, I there were a couple artists. Cindy Sherman was one, and Ana Mendieta was another one, where I felt like the women used their own forms as part of the story, their own bodies as part of the story, and I love that, and I thought, but it always struck me in my like little sort of mousy New England way as like a larger than life decision, like to be kind of this almost like the starlet of your own art, is, and the performance artists I think fall into that too. I knew that part of me judged that, and wondered, where the boundaries were between life and art when you do that kind of thing. And so I think I created in Maggie Richter and Kim Lord like the two sort of polarities about that, where Maggie really doesn't like her because Kim's dating her ex-boyfriend, but also she just kind of distrusts her a little bit. And then over the course of the book, she starts to see the like incredible courage and depth of what Kim is doing. So, but yeah, in terms of like where the kernel, I cannot remember. I just know I had the idea. I had the, if you write a mystery or thriller, you really want to know the reveal first. So what I knew first was the kind of twists of the end, and then I worked backwards to figure out the rest. When I was living in California, there was a kind of I did have a heightened awareness of a series of high profile female murders. And of course, Nicole Kidman predated that, but I'm not, sorry, not Nicole Kidman, Nicole Brown Simpson, sorry. Nicole Brown Simpson predated that, but she's like sort of one of the California murders that I think that really stuck with me when I first learned about it and kind of lodged in my head. And I did feel, when you're living in LA, have you lived in LA?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, when you're living in LA, you're conscious all the time of the hyper visuality and like kind of way that this city makes, the image of America, right? Like it makes the image of America all the time with the movies and the TV and just, the huge buildings with like, sky high pictures of models on them. It's just like that sense of the image is so, I grew up where there's no billboards, and here I was where like the visual nature of America is everywhere, and it's being manufactured, it's being made. And it's interesting and kind of sickening where that connects with homicide and female homicide, right? Because there is so much cranked out about true crime. And so I think it was out of that probably, in some ways the inspiration for the character came, but also I wanted to pick figures that represented, I guess, as much as I could, a spectrum of those high profile homicides. And then also there's one painting that kind of represents the ones who aren't talked about or are not, don't make the news. I'd figured out everything, and a lot of that, even though wasn't going to write the book for a while, I think I had figured out a lot of the twists that are related to the museum from working in the museum, and like kind of being like, oh, and I had an idea for a different book actually, but then I realized, oh, this is perfect for a, so yes, definitely. I got a call from my publisher one day, and it was a little weird because I mean the news about the book had been good already. I work with Counterpoint, which is a indie prep publisher, but we had gotten like Book of the Month Club, and a lot of just a lot of reviews appearing places when the book came out in June. Oh no, yeah, it came out in June, I think, and then in July, I believe, was when the my publisher called me, and it was like this conference call with several people from the office, and they were like, okay, are you sitting down? You got picked by Reese, and it's going to happen in August, so you've got to be quiet about it for the next like 6 weeks or so. I mean, it felt like a long time. I think it was at least 5 weeks. You can't tell anybody. It's part of their book club, that it's all secret and stuff. You've probably heard stories like this from other authors if you've interviewed them. And so, like, my editor threw his back out. I got hives. Like, we were all just so nervous about it during that time, waiting for it to unfold. And then when it unfolds, it's crazy. I mean, you watch it kind of like a stock market, I guess, because you can see it on Amazon. But the book went up to like, I think it went up to second in Audible on Amazon, and 13th for all books, in one day. And then it's kind of like one of those things where it like rises and falls, but it was really incredible. But I guess what was even more incredible is that I think she's created a really smart, supportive, and accessible ecosystem for authors to reach readers, and for authors to reach each other. And so it's not just the book sales and that kind of stuff. It's more, I think she's doing really good things, or the book club now, because I know she's kind of stepped back from it, but some of she's still doing, I think, piloting different initiatives to increase the amount of authors who are coming from underprivileged or sort of not typical backgrounds, and diverse backgrounds, and so yeah, it was great. I didn't think I'd get to sort of Sistine Chapel touches in my life, but I've gotten to, so I'm feeling pretty good about it. Originally I thought I had a trilogy, and this was the middle book. I'm not sure right now. I have the notes for a third, but I've been kind of swept into some other projects. But I thought, the art museum as the lens for one, and then the gallery and art school lens for another. And then I had an idea for a third that was the art colony, but that one I'm really struggling with. So I don't know if I'll end up writing it or not. But yeah, I always wanted to carry on the story. I didn't feel like her voice was done. So, was glad to be able to put out another book. Something I learned kind of the hard way was that standalone mysteries work differently than mystery series. And in mystery series, oftentimes the detective is a character, but they're not going through necessarily like a major sea change in their character. Or if it is, it's kind of tangential to the rest of the story. It's a subplot. And so if you're carrying over major sea changes from one book to another, and then trying to do another sea change, it's a little tough to also balance with the mystery, the logical, very rational mystery structure. That's sort of a lesson learned for me. Lesson in red for me. Lacey and Edith. Yes. Well, this book, I sat in my head for like 20 years, and then we got to the end of what I call the lockdown year, which was like the 20 to 21 academic year, especially, was what felt like a lockdown year, because that was the year I was teaching all online, and I started writing this book. Lacey and Edith met at a summer camp in Maine, and they became best friends. And the story, and then they kind of come of age in studio system Hollywood, because the family moves out there because Lacey's father is a hotel owner. Um, but the story is really very compressed. It happens, most of it in one night, 44 years in, well, let me just rephrase it. Um, it happens in one night in a hotel that's loosely based on the Millennium Biltmore in downtown LA. They're old women. They haven't seen each other in 44 years. You know that they were best friends when they were young. You know that something split them apart, but you don't know what it is. And the night is, the book is their conversation that night with some flashbacks and stuff to kind of catch you up on their relationship. But what they still have to tell each other, what secrets they might still hold, and will they reconcile? For the mysteries, more genre stuff, I do outline. I outline in notebooks, though. I sort of what I call sort of dream into the notebooks, the plot. I'm not good at just like linear outlining, but I'll try to imagine the scenes ahead and write them out and write what I'm having problems with. And, so the notebooks are very messy and drafty, but they're kind of the way that I get to the page with a plan. For Goldenseal, I used, well, the reason that this book sat in my mind for 20 years was because structurally it's inspired by a book called Embers by Sándor Márai, or I think it's like Sándor Márai if you pronounce it in the Hungarian. And that book is got a similar structure. It's a novel from 1942 about a general and a soldier who meet at the castle in the Carpathians, and they haven't seen each other in many years, and they were best friends when they were young. So I loved that structure, and I loved the way that structure allowed for dramatic monologue in a way that I hadn't really seen in other books. And so dramatic monologue also appears in this book. Now that sounds like it's going to be boring, but I'm hoping the way that it comes across is really immersive. And so this one was the first time I ever really tried to map the book using a classic in a way. And that probably helped it come out faster. I teach a NaNoWriMo class. The key isn't really in like a technical set of choices, but more of a philosophical approach, that your notebook is your place to sketch in whatever way feels right. So for some people that might be more drawing, honestly. For some people it might be mapping. For some people it might be writing out kind of rough drafts of scenes or characters. For me, because I'm not particularly good at drawing, it's a lot of different kind of writing that feels like sometimes I'm doing the actual writing of scenes, but more often is kind of a shorthand to myself of what might happen in the scenes. And that the notebook is always where you go first when you don't know what's ahead, so that when you get to the blank page, it's something you can kind of go back to. It's also really, I put in my notebook like dates, ages, timelines, all those things that you kind of forget, and you're like, oh, and who was that? When did that happen? Just to be able to flip back to that. So, yeah, I really have, and then I also use it when I'm stuck, and then I just ask myself the question, why can't I write this? And then I write about why I can't write it, and sometimes that kind of unlocks things.